Hey, how's it going, guys? It's November 2nd, here for another episode of the Software Cooperative Meetup. Um, Today we've got Watson speaking on exploitation and learning. Um, I think I really like this paper. I mean, I always like the papers though, but reading this one, Watson, me and you, we've talked about this several times, but I think I think we're in for a treat today. So yeah, let's dive right in.
All right. Thanks, guys. This paper and this topic is one that I've reviewed and gone over with people repeatedly for, I don't know, years. Um, the general idea is and it's one that many people have thought about. The way that we get our education is kind of skewed towards um, or away from critical thinking and towards kind of being more like a drone. Um, but there's some other things that sometimes elude uh, what people commonly think about as far as training. Oftentimes, when you're in the workplace, you think that you're training like a good company would train its employees. And just reading through um, different economics books, a lot of the game theory stuff that I would read through, I just I would see things where they would just outwardly say, "Yeah, do not train your employees. If you do train them in such a way to where you don't increase their signal on the market. So give them what's called firm specific training." And I talk a little bit more about that in the second half of the paper. But that's a counterintuitive thing that I, whenever I bring it up with people, it seems to surprise them. So I figured it's time to bring it up here. Just basically, whenever we're talking about cooperatives and things of that nature, it always ends up being um, you're wrestling with. Well, one of the reasons why you want to do a cooperative is you'll think that there's inherently less exploitation in the cooperative. It's more fair, more equitable. So, um, how how does that affect the training within a cooperative? And really, um, it really comes down to again hierarchies and doing things in an organic way. So this paper was written to try to explore that, and I tried to put as many counterintuitive things in there that I could about the subject. And one of them starts out with the if any of you ever heard of or read the E Myth book, it's interesting because he just blatantly says, yeah, you do not want excellent people. You want average people. Excellent people will make it to where your business and your process is not repeatable. So he just blatantly, and this is a bestseller up there with Good to Great and a bunch of other, you know, business great so-called business books. Totally counterintuitive, and it's all the type of literature that the regular rank and file never reads. So it's just interesting. Um, so, does anybody have any questions so far before I get into the education stuff?
I know.
Yeah.
It's good. Do you agree with that?
What the
The
no,
the human.
I don't. I don't agree with that. I don't necessarily like the whole thing with. I mean, franchises are, they have their place, but
Yeah,
they've done so much damage with fast food and everything. I'm not. I don't care if the franchises disappear.
yeah.
You know.
Repeatability doesn't seem to be that much of a
Yeah.
cherished thing.
Yeah. So it's when it comes to education and talking about exploitation, John Taylor Gatto is a guy that I kind of go to. He has a bunch of books, Dumbing Us Down and Weapons of Mass Instruction are both, and he's got a bunch of others, are both uh, about the history of education in the United States, going back to Prussia and the influences there. The main thesis there is what you really want to do, and I can read a quote from Woodrow Wilson here so that you can, because it's like almost an unbelievable thing. You know, when you hear people say, yeah, you know, education is there to make you into a drone, and then you see that it actually is there to make you into a drone, that, you know, it's the disturbing thing. So um, let's see here.
What page is that on?
It's right on, I'm going to share it here. So this is Woodrow Wilson, you know, president. We want one class of persons to have a liberal education, and we want another class of persons, a very much larger class of necessity in every society, to forego the privileges of a liberal education and fit themselves to perform specific, difficult manual tasks. And that was during a talk he gave in 1909. So I find that to be just absolutely, you know, it's just startling um, that, you know, that would be there. And the liberal education, it's really the elite schools are going to give you that liberal education, but regular rank and file are not going to give you some of those things. And then, so what are those things, you know, within a, that you would learn in a liberal education? John Taylor Gatto makes a distinction between what he calls a classical education and what he said, what Woodrow Wilson is calling a liberal education, and then this progressive one that we have now. One of the things is that's a big difference is, you know, they used to teach logic, just a regular argumentation or rhetoric, what you could call rhetoric now, and just how to form arguments, a logical argument. And I know Taylor and the rest of you guys, you've heard me say this all the time. You can ask even programmers, you know, try to make a logical argument, any type of logical argument. And most people, the vast majority of people, cannot make a logical argument at all. And it's something that it's easier than multiplication, basically. You could learn it. There's no reason why. Every time I meet someone with a PhD in education, I ask them the same question: why don't they teach logic in school? And first they'll say it's too hard. And it's like, okay, if A, then B, A, therefore B. That's not hard. That's modus ponens, the most basic structure, and it will allow you to make logical arguments. You know, and they just go down the line and go down the line, and it's like there's really no reason for it other than, well, maybe it's on purpose. You know, and if you Google it, you have a lot of people saying, yeah, that's on purpose. But then trying to find the history of it on why, you can find John Taylor Gatto talking about it, but I can't find people who literally have a PhD in education. I've talked to at least 8 people with PhDs. No, can't give me an answer. Can't give me an answer. Can't go and research it and come back with me and give me an answer. So that's disturbing to me. So that tells me it's not just like conspiracy, you know, but for whatever reason, it's not there. John Taylor Gatto's argument is, or one of the things that he brings to bear is he talks about like the founding fathers of the country were all trained with a classical education. They did learn rhetoric, and something happened after that with like is it like John Dewey, Charles Pierce, the pragmatists, a bunch of other groups where they were forming how we do education here, and it's just slowly through the influence of like scientific management is when it really started changing. Um, it got to the point to where it uh, critical thinking was just taken out. And I don't like the phrase critical thinking. I like saying literally logic. That simple thing, like most math, something very simple. You don't have to have a whole. You can learn logic in 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I don't know, whatever. So that's the first half of the paper. It talks about really the different things that you're missing, and when you're getting your formal education. Um, do you guys have any questions yet? Not yet. Okay. So within logic, that's the like rhetoric, that's the umbrella, but there are specific things that that I think people should learn um, within their education uh, that I think is like purposefully kept out. One of them is negotiation. Another one is like strategy. And then I have what I'm calling filtering, but basically how you use experts. Um, the the guy that wrote the power negotiating book, he's surprised that his daughter went to Berkeley and got an MBA and never got a negotiating class. And his thing, his reasoning is exactly the same line of reasoning with this education. It's just thinking that negotiating allows you to do things like collective bargaining and uh, get a better position for what it is that you produce. Um, and that's not conducive to a hierarchy. So things that benefit hierarchies end up not, they find their way out of Taylorism, Fordism, scientific management, all these things that have direct effect on curriculums, especially the um, more advanced curriculums. And so there's a whole section on that part, talking about different costs, um, opportunity costs, and so on and so forth. And then, and so that those all fall under what I was calling measuring, but how to make things equitable. And that's a big part of how I got into game theory, was researching the problem of fair division, which um, really ends up being there's different terms for fairness, or different ways you can view it. Equitability is one where it seems to be kind of what most people would think is fairness, where you try to take a bunch of things into consideration. But in order to do that, you need to be able to measure, and you'll find that top tiers um, of management. So, for instance, like Peter Drucker's this a book that made him the most famous. I'm forgetting the name of it right now, but they wrote in the 50s, was all about measuring. His thing was, if you measure, and some people um, think that Hewlett from HP uh, is the one that coined this phrase, but it's really Peter Drucker, and maybe some people before him. But if you can measure it, you can manage it, or something of that kind of along that ilk. But he's really the one that popularized it. And so, um, but that type of thing is not shown to the rank and file. So my argument is, if you know how to measure your product or your service that you produce, then you know how much it's worth. People don't want you to know how much what you produce is worth, because then they have a better negotiating position with you in a hierarchy, all that type of stuff. So there's a whole section of on measuring and making things equitable, um, and describing that whole portion there. And then there's the second half, which is vocational training. So the first half, like I said, the first half of the paper is educational. The second half is vocational, which is basically what you get when you are working. All the different forms on the job training that they'll pay for you to go to, relearning a new, like whether we're in software, so learning new languages, whatever. And I put before I get into that, do you guys got anything?
Yeah, I don't have anything directly.
Mhm.
It's yeah, I mean, I guess we'll probably get to it though. It's like it's really interesting. I mean, it's like the way I see it is, you know, if we're as a general like population not being taught these things or having the the opportunity when I feel like it's just not as efficient. Even these managers, it's almost like it's this siloed thing that's not getting that's not growing. I wonder like if we're not being taught how to do measurements, when people do become that, reach a level of management in their careers, how is it calculated then? And so I feel like it's either, either they're winging it or it's just some, um, you know, made up way for that company. And it's almost like it could be better. However, the measurements is, if it's just two brains are better than one, essentially. But that's interesting. I wonder how efficient it is though, the measurement that is going on. Yeah.
If you don't, are you saying if you don't push the measurements down and distribute that knowledge, that it would be less efficient? Is that what you're suggesting?
Exactly. Yes. I mean, it's just, iron sharpens iron. If everyone was negotiating, right, it would just, you know, be. I don't know. It's an argument that it could be more effective because managers would be, they would get better at it. But
I imagine that you have a tier of managers that aren't very good at measuring, or they only have knowledge at some level, depending on the size of the company. So they may be able to
yeah.
manage people, but they don't direct the product or company. And so there's another tier above that.
Mm. Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Good point.
But
Yeah.
I think back to the topic, it's about exploitation. So is it going to be more efficient to hold that knowledge for the people that want it at the top versus distributing it? So
It can be
Yeah.
that, and this is what I think, that there's an equilibrium where there's a hierarchy where again smart people at the top and quotes and everyone else below, and that equilibrium meaning there isn't any move that you can do that will make it to where you're better off, or there isn't any move that can be made to where one person's better off and everyone else is at least the same. So there's an equilibrium where everybody, no matter what, you're stuck, right? So you can't stop the exploitation, whatever. And there's an equilibrium where I think where it's more flat. So once you're there, it's done. So like winner take all situations, it isn't like okay, the market's going to solve the winner. No, it's an equilibrium. No one can do anything. It has to be broken up outside of the market. The same thing. There has to be outside force. So I think that there's an equilibrium for both of those things, or a bunch of things in between. So it doesn't really have to be like one is better. I think one is better from. Uh, it could be that one is better from a long-term standpoint, right? But you wouldn't be able. It won't get there naturally. You'd have to do something to control it. But and I also think one is better morally. So you know, from the perspective of somebody who isn't gonna be even have the capability of exploiting a whole bunch of people. Of course, I don't want to win or take all situations, right? It's just rational for me not to want one because I don't have that capability anyways. Right. Even if it's evil, whatever. But that's how I think of it. I've stopped thinking that. But the concept of equilibrium allows you to just say, okay, you don't have to think that markets will solve everything and all that stuff like that. You can just totally say, okay, there's multiple solutions, or what you would call a solution, and you just want to try to make one or get towards one where it's more equitable.
It makes me think of John Rawls stuff too, where if you're saying that you want society to makes me think of John Rawls to cut off the
Was that feedback?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
okay, yeah. If you're wanting to cut off those extremes so that you can raise the overall standard for everyone, when you don't know where you're going to come in, right? So if you don't know whether you're going to be born in a household with a lot of income or
Veil of ignorance.
yeah, just veil of ignorance. So you have no idea when you're stepping in. So this would tie right into it on the education, saying that you want to have that capability for everybody, and then the standard of living for overall average is going to go up. And you still would have some people that are going to try to exploit and everything else, but now you're limiting their capability.
So, question that I have about when you say hierarchy, there's a lot that behind it that I think about. I think about the alternative. One of the things that when I think about hierarchical stuff, if I think in an organizational structure with you said the smartest people at the top, which that's what they like to think, right?
Yeah.
And actually, you want the smartest people somewhere else. But the thing, when I think about structure of the brain and just the neurons, if I think what's the most intelligent neuron? Well, it's sort of a meaningless question. Without the network, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And it's not that this one always is the deciding factor. It's the equilibrium is a constant balancing thing, depending on the input, depending on what resources and stimulation and goals in any particular thing. The attention shifts focus. Hierarchy is really good about focusing. It's really good about eliminating all distractions so that one thing becomes the priority. Really good for getting long distances with little distraction. But if you want to go into a chaotic environment where you don't necessarily know what the outcome is going to be, you want to be able to have variability and adaptability.
Resilience. Yeah.
So it's kind of a both. It's not that hierarchy is always bad. It's overfit for the problem of. Actually, I think it works pretty well for doing a lot of stuff, but it doesn't. It messes us up.
Yeah.
Where we are now, it's not very good. So the cooperative model, and I'm not sure that it's an exact corollary or opposite, but I'm curious if there are other. Thinking a lot about hierarchies and kind of alternative thinking strategies. Do you have more than one alternative to hierarchy, or is it?
Well, I mean, to me, there's just different. Like hierarchy is like a continuum. So I mean, you could also get into political theory with it. It's just all the extreme left is absolutely flat, complete anarchy, from the proper use of the word, not the people getting beheaded or whatever you think. And then extreme right is monarchies. Right? You got the king and all that. So you really don't run up against somebody who's one of those. You really don't. Even someone that says they are, you talk to them for about 2 minutes and then they're not. So it's where do you want to pick along the line? And there's all kinds of what cooperative is this massive umbrella. There's all these different things within it, worker owned. And, I think that that's probably going to be the one that I would agree with the most. But even outside of using that language, I like things that you can just find in the wild. And I like consultancies. They just naturally, when everybody is some type of owner and and everyone has knowledge of what ownership is, like a law firm or something, you can't exploit a lawyer. It's very difficult if they know the law. And so what ends up happening naturally is, and organically, is you get two tiers, maybe three, but mostly two. The largest law firms, they have literally thousands of lawyers, and they got two tiers. So it's something like that, and that's where. But it's very well. I don't even really want to say that there's a lot of law, or there's a lot of work within law where it's not. It's actually, they're very generic, like they're very general in what they do. It isn't just, oh, I go to court or whatever. They do all kinds of things. There's people with the law do this. They do engineering stuff. So consultancies can, for services, I think, handles a lot, especially we're in a service-based economy. You can handle a lot with that, but you can also, cooperatives come from the manufacturing background. So that's really, it definitely works there because, people are doing it all over the world there. But they do like a democratic model where it kind of looks like it's less slack. I mean, you're going to have multiple tiers, but it's just that everybody gets to vote. So you've got that. So something like that, where there's ownership, and it's just really, really hard to exploit people. And also it's important how it gets created. So the organic part is important. You can have cooperatives, or you can have worker-owned things where their workers are still getting exploited. They don't know how to direct, and they don't know how to manage, and it was kind of like handed over to them, like, okay, you're going to be worker-owned now. But because of things like the way the education was set up, people are essentially socialized to not know how to direct. And so it's really, a lot of what this paper is about socialization of people. So it's really, you don't have anything stopping you, you think, but socialization is real. So you do have something stopping you if you spend years and years and years of being told, okay, ring the bell, move from here to here, when you hear the bell ring, and all this. It's not free to try to resist that. So that's kind of where I put it.
I think that you can have any format fit within the, I guess, I don't even know if cooperatives are the right word, but trying to distribute the knowledge and have people be able to be self-directed. And I guess then if you look at companies like Valve, they're supposed to be flat, a game company, and then they will build little temporary hierarchies to get something done. So that would be like a spike to go far, like you were saying, on a very focused effort. And then whenever you're done with that, the idea is it's built in, like with the way people understand that once you've achieved that goal, then it should go away. Because if it doesn't, then it's no longer achieving the higher level goal, which is to help the whole group, right? So I don't think you have to say there's only one way that we are going to think and organize and work together.
Cool. Right. Anybody else? All right. So vocational. I put a little history in here on what it looked like within our field, and how I remembered it. So within the 90s, people got trained. There was the boom, 1995, 1996, and everybody was just hunting employees. All the different companies were just totally poaching each other's uh, people, and they were promising training, and they were delivering training. There was all kinds of different kinds of training. Um, on the, people would do things to where on Fridays, half the day or a couple hours, they were doing training, so you would get paid, and it was kind of like a meetup group during the week. You had people come in and give you training on site, all kinds of things like that, and it was part of what you would think the normal way of, I guess, the normal thought about um, training. If you have smarter employees, it's going to be great and help you and all of that. And that went from maybe 95 to about 98, and that stuff was gone. And nobody trained anymore. And what was also interesting is really I found that people weren't really talking about it. It just went away. And I mean, there was some mention of, well, oh yeah, you get trained in something like SAP or something that was really hot at the time. And then you could work for 6 months or 3 months or whatever, and then leave and go bill $300 an hour or something. And it seemed like, okay, that went away totally. So people wouldn't do that type of training anymore. So there was a little bit of talk about, yeah, it seemed unwise to train people a little bit, but definitely not from employers. They didn't outwardly say, no, we're not going to train you. So it kind of switched, and I tried to make this model about that, tried to outline that. So another interesting thing was how consulting was going in the 90s was there was on the bench, which I find a lot of people have never even heard that phrase before now, but they essentially the what was it, the big five, I don't know how many they were, but the big five consultancies back then, and even other smaller ones, if they couldn't place you, then you could sit around and train yourself, and you would get paid. And they would, during the interviews or talking with you, they would say, they would brag about it, like, oh, this person has been on the bench for a month, this person's been on the bench for 3 months, or something like that. Like, don't worry about it, if you come do consult, because people then were concerned about they wanted stability, and they wanted to have regular W-2 work. So that was their way of bragging about it. And another thing that's funny is people would actually complain about the bench. Like, oh, I don't want to do that because that sounds boring. I don't want to be paid to just sit around and learn and read. Like, actually literally complaining about that kind of thing. It just seems unreal now. But that's like, well, I Googled it. Somebody's, bragging that they've been on the bench for 3 years or something like that. But I haven't heard of it. And, it's literally been 20 years now, right? So, yeah, it's crazy. And so right around 98, 99, there was this, they still had to say that there's training. They still had to say there's training, but it was this little rinky-dink stuff. New Horizons. Have you ever? New Horizons, right? There's this, okay, we have a day's worth of training. We're going to teach you SQL. Go over here. It's New Horizons. You're going to learn this. And so, that, so that they can say, yeah, we do training. But it was still generic training. So meaning, and I'll get into it later, but meaning that you could learn SQL and go somewhere else and use that same technique or whatever, or technology. but it wasn't a very strong signal. It was rinky-dink. Like, you wouldn't want to say, hey, I took a class at New Horizons or something. That would be silly. But you actually could learn there or talk with someone there about whatever issues, so whatever. But it was pretty rinky-dink. Then there was the contracts. So what it started being right around 2000. After that, they started trying to say, okay, we're going to give you some training. It could be that they literally, maybe pay for somebody to do the master's degree, or something that would be involved, like, I don't know, get a Java architect training or Cisco some certification or something like that. But they put you on the contract, like, but you're going to have to pay us back if you don't stay for a year or something like that. And so that's right around 2000. It started being, okay, it's still generic training, but we're trying to stop you from having that signal in whatever way we can, right? And that wasn't great, because people would say, oh yeah, if I'm gonna, basically all you can do is just take my last 2 weeks pay. That's all you can do. I don't, so, oh well, yeah, I'll just leave if we get a better, good enough offer or whatever. And so that kind of, and then just people just literally just stopped doing training. It was just, no, we're not going to do it. So people started having to do, they started within 2000, you had to there were certifications that you can go after. So that movement got big. Cisco's, Microsoft has theirs, some Java had some, and then other certs, with the networking system administration, the CompTIA stuff, that stuff was big 2000 in the last, decade. But you were going to pay for it. Maybe they would, but you were going to pay. So now it's the individual, maybe 5,000-10,000 out of their own pocket or more, right? And then also the boot camps, what we've seen in the past 10 years. So from, I don't know, 2005-ish, 2007-ish, there's some of these things started popping up. And still, you're paying for it, individual, but it's generic training. Then what I started noticing, again, mid-2000, whatever, some weird things within corporate world, big corporate, these esoteric technologies that nobody uses, or someone on the other side of the country might use, or in another city or something like that, maybe developed by IBM. So I feel like a lot of like IBM business objects, it's something that nobody's heard of it or whatever, and you could do something with it. I don't know what it was, but you could develop whole systems with it, and there's this whole bureaucratic thing. But it really is a firm-specific type training. It's no longer generic, but they'll train you. Right. And it was expensive to get trained for that kind of thing. So all kinds of things, popping up as far as very vendor-specific, and something to where there's only 1 or 2 shops in the city that might do it, maybe, I don't know. And it starts being to where, okay, and then proprietary employer-specific technologies, that type of on the job training. So it's still, you're getting paid if you're coming in and you're learning there, and it takes you 2 months to get ramped up. They're essentially paying you to get trained. You can't use that anywhere else. It doesn't give you a great signal if you know some framework that nobody else uses, that's internal, whatever. So that's specific as well. And what the response to that, a lot of people just basically building their resume up by working on open source, putting things out there that other people can see. And that's your generic signal to say, okay, I'm not a complete idiot. I know what I'm doing or whatever, because I can't build up a signal through going somewhere. So again, it used to be that you could go to a large, like you could go to or some company like that, and it was, okay, you're a well-trained person, you have a strong signal for the job market. Now it's, you go to Google, it's, your signal is that you got accepted at Google. It's not that you got great training at Google. That's not it. Your signal is just that you got accepted there. So nobody looks at you like, oh, okay, well, he must have learned a whole lot. That's not a big signal at all. So it's the game was, or it ends up being something along the lines of, you want to get people that are kind of like a diamond in the rough. They don't have a signal. Train them, but don't give them a signal. So that would be the specific training, nothing that people outside, would learn about, whatever. And that type of person, you can, they have all the incentive to stay. They don't have any job market power. And so that's the history that I remember and that I thought how it worked. And lo and behold, if you read some economics books and stuff like that, a little one quote here, I'm going to just read this out loud because I thought it was just ridiculous. But, managers should also draw a distinction between firm specific and task specific learning. If learning is task specific rather than firm specific, then workers who acquire skill through learning may be able to shop around their talent and capture value for themselves in the form of higher wages. When learning is firm specific, worker knowledge is tied to their current employment and the firm will not have to raise wages as workers become more productive. Managers should encourage firm specific learning. So that's from a, economic textbook. Just if you thought I was making it up. So, do you guys have any questions about any of that?
Yeah, I don't have any questions. It was a lot. It makes sense though. I mean, as far as it sucks to be an employee. I feel like you get the short end of the stick. But I can see the logic and why, businesses would cut out that training. At the end of the day, you think, it's an obvious that it could hurt you, but on the other end of that, if you're a great company and you make your people better, and you're fast to them, you can only, you'll have more efficient, stronger workers, and you'll make more money. But maybe, I guess. But yeah, it's interesting. It sucks.
Well, one place where I know of a concrete example where they are like that, but it's at the top level, is GE. They have like a leadership college, and I don't know, there's some high percentage of executives for the Fortune 500 that come from GE. Like, people poach the business unit managers at GE to become their executives for their large companies because they're that well trained. And they brag about that. Most executives come from our company. They poach our people, and we want that to happen. If we're doing it right, that will happen. So Jack Welch and the guy that came after him, they were talking about that. That's the only one that I know of that is large, or that's the only one I know of at all, but that I've read about where that happens. And they actually don't, they want it to happen more. So
curious if there's more of I'm really curious about a form of cooperative model that worker owned, worker owned and that you get your it's equity based. You increase the value of the company, you increase your own worth. So and ways in which education works in that realm. I mean, I think of it in terms of, on the bench or not. It's what you ideally, for me, what I'd like to be working on is the project that, some venture. I'm building something new. I'm creating something that's going to be, worthwhile. If I can't make money doing that, I may have to subsidize that a little bit with specific work that somebody's hiring me to do. But even in that, there's some equity. But this, one of the challenges with that, one of the things that I'm curious about how it's dealt with in cooperatives is that there's a little bit of a crapshoot, right? You can see that some people work hard. Okay, great. That's one reason that you might want to do it. You can also see people have great ideas, or they're very talented. Maybe the idea that they have isn't necessarily generating a lot of revenue, but it allows for the generation of revenue. It's like, we're building something that, hey, this is. It doesn't really do a lot internally, or not a lot externally, but we found something. If somebody who's working on software that makes it dead simple to measure stuff, and now we can see, oh, hey, wow, cool. Now I know what's going on. So it's the balancing of that, trying to figure out how to. It could be a fairly complex equation of how much equity do you get for work that you're putting into it, for ideas that you're contributing. But the thing that I think is most is compelling about it is that the more that you do that, in a sense, you increasing the value of the firm increases your value as well. So you want to do that. It's not if it's in some sense a disincentive to increase your signal. Great, but you going out, you've lost that equity, right? Yeah. So I want to keep reinvesting that. I want to keep increasing my, and in addition, to increase my education as well. I want the people that I'm working with to be successful. So if I learn something, I want you to know it as well. It no longer becomes advantageous for me to keep my cards close to my chest and only keep the knowledge that I have to myself. I want us all to be successful. Granted, I can see why in a normal firm, if I'm renting my time or a company's renting my time from me, but they're getting all of the equity for it, then that clearly is not. It's never going to get to what I'm interested in. Right. But I'm wondering what are different models, and I'm sure that there are lots. I just don't know that as well.
Yeah. Part of it sounded like indirect. Indirect revenue. So I guess that's the first part. There is models and stuff. I mean, we've been working on it a lot, but you're trying to, you think marketing or sales, and there's a lot of things that when you're building up beforehand don't make anything, and then supporting roles and stuff like that. But
there's a hidden thing that has to be tackled within that problem, which is whatever entity you're with, it's the measuring problem. Whatever entity, they have to have some way of being savvy enough to value that thing. It can't be just, I did this great thing and you all have to do what I say. You have to pay me for it. You have to educate them. So it really does not work with a group of people who don't know how to measure or don't want to measure. So you got the stuff where you can do what everyone else does, like you got keep what you kill. Okay, fine. You move a little bit further in. Okay, you got sales, marketing, percentages, things like that. Fine, right? As far as taking risks, bringing in work, all that stuff, then you get into you built something that brings in work, or that's directly bringing in revenue. Fine, whoever worked on it, that's what they get. And then getting more towards the more difficult is what he was talking about, which is I built something that does not bring in revenue directly. That would be the the most difficult thing to say, okay, this thing that doesn't build in revenue directly, how do you measure it? And you could measure it, but you've got to basically be a statesman. Okay, we're going to vote on that this thing was worth this much money, and here's the measurements and all that. But I think that that's fair.
Yeah, I mean, the part of it that I think is challenging is like, for instance, we create, somebody builds software that makes it easy for collaboration and easy for measuring the collaboration. So it makes it so that my fantasy world, blockchain stuff, this conversation, hey, we're participating, everybody on this call is participating in this conversation, right? And so it's something gets built out of, somebody goes off and starts working on something else, and somebody else contributes something, maybe not contributes all of code, but some ideas, hey, some tweaks, what would be great is whatever. You start doing that, it's building the infrastructure that allows the collaboration to happen. Now, one person comes in using that infrastructure and comes up with a great idea, builds something, it's like, hey, you know what? I think I built the next Facebook. Mm-hmm. That idea is great, but how much did that infrastructure contribute to the enablement of this? In some sense, I like it as a venture capital, but internally a cooperative venture capital where we're investing in the infrastructure as kind of the basic equity, and that whatever ventures come out of that feedback largely into that, to some extent. And voting makes sense. I mean, it's the same kind of the idea that you're talking about with Rawls, that you don't know coming into this, are you the one that's going to have the Facebook idea,
right, or
not? So you want it to be fair. You regardless of where it is, you want to make sure that I'm not going to feel, great. You came up with the idea. I get a portion of that because I helped contribute to the infrastructure. But
the example that you gave is a little bit, I find that to be a little bit easier, because basically the value of the Facebook thing is whatever it is minus the infrastructure. Like, can they go to a different infrastructure?
Yeah.
If it's like no at all, you can't, then
yeah,
no, the value is very much dependent on that infrastructure. So
what if you said the infrastructure allowed them to see the capability that for the application that they built?
Yeah, that's the next. Again, we're getting more and more difficult. Like, okay, this allowed you to have ideas. I'm kind of like that is so far ahead of, at some point you're going to need to say, okay, this was, the government made the internet and you made this other thing. You don't necessarily pay we all pay the government, but you don't necessarily pay the money. At some level, it's going to be, break away.
But you do pay taxes to help the government run
everybody,
stuff.
But it's
right. But maybe that could be something, that same model though within the cooperative, knowing that the infrastructure that's built and helps contribute, to everything within there needs to be sustained.
But even that breaks because people aren't paying taxes. They go to a different country and hold their stuff in a different country, and they figure it out, and they don't have to. It's already built.
If you think about it as okay, let's simplify the tax ramifications within the co-op. So it's not really a tax, but it's it's essentially a tax, right? There's something that you pay your fees as part of the membership of the cooperative. And you're contributing your stuff, and if you're wildly successful, okay, a portion of that goes back as taxes as well. And if you want to say, well, I'm going to move to a different country, and I don't want to do that anymore, well, you leave that here, right? That the valuation is here. Yeah, you could take it. I mean, it's quite interesting complexity there. But if you want to do that, then
I'm kind of, whenever the closer you get to where it's complicated, the more I'm just like, the market decides. Yeah. Legally, do they have rights to do whatever they want? Then that's, let them go do whatever they want. If you set it up to where if you move and you cough, we own the cough. Well, then that's going to make it to where they don't do anything.
So the thing that fascinates me about it is that the more hierarchical it is, the more you rely on policy, right? The more you rely on laws, and it's written down. This is what's so. The less you get away from hierarchy, the more it's kind of market based. It's going to be negotiated. It's going to be some complex form of and previous negotiation may have no particular value in this next negotiation, right? It's not going to be based on because we wrote it down. This is the percentage. It's kind of a constantly influx thing. And I agree. It's complex, but I'm wondering if you could do internal market dynamics that make that so that the balancing.
The internal market dynamics can happen. It's just that nobody's going to bring their idea if they don't think that you value it. So that the people within the group have to be savvy in measuring. They have to know, yeah, the Facebook thing was valuable. It's going to be valuable. They would have to trust that. And like, yes, I like working with these people. I'm going to build this thing and with them. And there's going to be some, whenever you work on using this platform, there's going to be some ties legally, whatever. But then but if they don't think that the base is savvy, they're just no, I'm just going to, people, they will have a good idea and not build it just because they don't want to deal with people who might not be savvy. So, yeah. But that, again, it just goes, to me, it's be better first, be better than the hierarchy, the regular, like just be better than Google. Like you should be able to have better incentives than Google does for their people, where it's just like, oh, build us something, do something on Friday, and we're going to take it. But you can do whatever you want, right? That used to excite people. You're not as excited about that anymore. But you should at least be better than that.
Yeah.
And then just get better and better and better. Because the extreme part of it, without the measuring, it requires an economic mind to look at, to build an incentive system. It isn't like a bike shed where, we just did it and it works. You got to make that your main focus if you're going to be serious about, which we're trying to be very serious about. So we're getting close. So the final portion of this was I just put together a game that just talks about, and using game theory, that talks about the firm-specific and generic training. And I think it's kind of self-explanatory with the examples I have in there. But basically, it's rational for a company to just provide you firm-specific training. And then when all the companies get together, which they have, and they move towards that specific training, you're basically locked in. So you are forced to do what people are doing, which is create your signal by developing your GitHub account and going to meetups and networking and these types of things. And you're not going to have a big signal from, I'm at this company and they train me well. That's gone. So there you go. And that is really all of it. And it's 8:08. So you guys have anything else?
Yeah, good stuff.
All right.
Yeah. Hey, man, I'm not the guy who was speaking earlier to you, Watson. Hey man, what's your name?
David.
David.
All right, cool. Okay. I'm Josh. Nice meeting you. Man, I think you had like a really good point as far as so as far as, you're part owner in a company and now you're working on this great idea, just being in a flatter organization leads you, it just opens the door for the possibility of opportunity. You have opportunity, to create your ideas, to make, more money, everything. Um, One thing I just like to add to that too, as far as just touching on the training. Um, if let's say all things being equal, this is like a perfect situation here. I think it's like even and you guys may have touched on this. I just didn't hear it in these exact terms, but I think it incentivizes members of that organization, that cooperative, that flatter organization, to train everyone else. Um, because it's like, yeah, you might have that idea, but I mean, who's gonna help you with that idea if you have it? It's like, rarely you can't do things by yourself. Um, I mean, even if it's just not your idea, it's just once that opportunity for new work, i.e., more money comes in. Uh, if you have better people around you, then it's just that much more opportunity for success. And so I think if I don't know, I just wanted to touch on that. It's almost like a no-brainer that training would still exist and be like the go-to thing uh, in flatter organizations. Yeah, at least that's what I've experienced too. Mhm. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Josh.
All right. Well, this looks like it was a good session. We're coming up on the end here, so it's been an hour. I don't want to take too long on these things, so.
I think we're good. Anyone has any topic suggestions? Throw it out or post it on Meetup or YouTube, either one. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Cool.
See y'all
See you
next
guys
time.
next time.
Yep.